Everyone, and welcome to this very quick tutorial where I'm going to show you how to do some squash and stretch in Adobe Animate. And this is what it will look like. Now, in terms of squash and stretch, as you can see here, we got to think about real-world gravity and real-world physics when we animate. But the advantage that we have is that we can over-exaggerate a little bit. So at its highest point right here at the top, it's going to be quite normal, but by the time it hits the bottom, it's going to be squished down and it's also going to be stretched out a little bit as well. So it's going to be so that it looks like that gravity is pushing it down. But before it reaches that point, as you can see here, um, as the force of it is bringing it down, it's going to stretch and it's going to become thinner at the same time. And then when it starts to come off the ground, we have that same scenario again, where it stretches because it's got force behind it that's pushing it back up into the air before it reaches its highest point again, where it returns to normal. So let's get started. So we'll go File, New, and we want to create a full HD and leave the change the frame rate to 15 frames a second and hit Create. And let's minimize this window, bring this window smaller so that we can see our entire stage. And just for the time being, we're not going to create the full background because I want to create a very short video, but you can have the time to do that afterwards if you like. But what we're going to do is we're just going to go File and we're going to import to Library, our little green alien, or if you see it as a skull, it's a skull. Now, if you're one of my students, this image is going to be available for you. If not, you can still follow along if you draw a circle using the shape tool or an oval here, or you can bring in your own image as long as it's a PNG or a JPEG with a translucent background, you'll be perfectly fine. Now, once you've imported it, you've realized that it's not here and you can't figure out where it is. What you need to do is come over to here to this library panel and you'll find it right there. This is just so that we can click and drag it. And if we want to use this object multiple times, all we have to do is click and drag in comparison to just going File, Import to Stage. That is a one-time only scenario. So now that we've got our little object here, character that we're going to animate, I want to come down and double click on the layer and call this little alien. And I'm going to go to frame 24 because I kind of know this is about 24 frames. And I'm going to select that and I'm going to hit this tool here that says Insert Keyframe, and it will automatically make a keyframe there and make a keyframe at the start, which is really good because I know that at the start and the finish, because I want to loop this bounce, they're going to be exactly the same. I also know that at frame 12 it is also going to be the same. So I'm going to click the tool again to say insert a keyframe there. So now I'm going to do my first pass. And so because I already know that it takes 6 frames for the creature to get to the ground, I'm going to go to frame 6. I'm going to drag my creature, to about here, and then it's going to automatically put in a keyframe for me. I'm not going to do the other one because what we're going to do is we're going to just work out our first bounce and then we can copy this bounce and paste it behind as well. So now that I've done this, this is what we consider our first pass. But as you can see, just like I was talking with squash and stretch, we need to make sure that when it hits the ground, it squashes. So I'm going to select my free transform tool, and this little circle here, I'm going to move it down to the bottom here because this is kind of like our anchor or our pivot point. And when we go to do the squash, it's going to keep the ground as it's on the ground. So I'm going to just bring it down a bit, and I'm also going to squish it out a bit. So now in our first pass, we see it goes from here to here and then back up again. And that's what we consider our first pass in animation for pose to pose animation. I prefer pose to pose animation because I actually find that it gives me a bit of a roadmap as to where I need to go. Um, so what we now can do is it's pretty easy. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to select this onion skin tool here because this is going to show me where all my other keyframes are in kind of like a light opacity. So if I move this tool and I move it over, I can see now where my next keyframe is and what position and what it looks like. So that kind of helps giving me this roadmap. So now I know that when I come down a little bit, it's going to give, when I do my in-between frames here, it's going to give me a bit more sight. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to move it down a little bit, making sure it's kind of staying in a straight line. Otherwise it'll look wobbly. Now we do know that as it's in the air, it's going to have a bit of air time. So we don't want it to be dropping down too fast. So let's give it a bit of air time. Let's move to the next frame. I'm going to drop it down just that little bit more. It's getting a bit faster now. And here I'm going to drop it to about here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start stretching it just that little bit, maybe just a little bit in there. Move it down just a little bit more as well. And then I'm going to come to frame 5, and this is where it's definitely going to be really stretched like this. And it's going to be a bit thinner. And then frame 5 is like that. Frame 6, sorry, is where we've squished down. So as we can see, we've already got this here, and it looks like it kind of moves a little, doesn't it? So we can always just arrow it. Looks okay. Yep. So we've got that as it moves down. Now I could go back through and try and, change this just the way we did it as well, like this. But that's really time consuming. Let's try and not waste a bit of time here. But what we can do is we can come to frame 2, 3, 4, and 5 by shift selecting. We can select all of them. We can right mouse click, copy that frame. We're going to, at frame 6, we're going to leave that one. Frame 7, we're leaving it as a gap. And frame 8, we're going to shift select frame 8, 9, 10, and 11. Then I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to paste. Now, before you click off them, right mouse click again and select reverse frames. And now what it's going to do is it's going to reverse it in the other direction. So it's going upwards. So if we hit play, we've got one bounce. It's really simple. So now what we're going to do is we're going to let it have a bit of air time, and then from frame 14 we want to select from frame 2, we want to shift select every single frame all the way up to frame 11. We're going to right mouse click, copy that frame. We're going to leave that one as it is in frame 13, and in frame 14 we're going to paste. Oopsie. Sorry, we're going to select all these layers up until the second last one, and we're going to paste these layers. And so now when we hit play, we have two bounces. Now we want to loop this, so what we can do is we can select this button here. You'll come up with these little blue arrows, just drag them so they cover your whole scene and press play. And there you go, we have a nice bouncing little alien or skull. Now if you want to put in a little background like we saw in the video, now's the time to do it. Just add an extra layer, go for it, add a really pretty background. It could be on the moon or wherever. And So once you've finished doing a little background and you want to export it as a video, what you also need to make sure that you do first is that you have Media Encoder already open. Oops. Because Adobe Animate likes to throw a little tantrum if you don't already have it open. And then just go File, Export, Video Media. Make sure you're saving it to whatever file that you want, where you want that location to be, and click Export, and it will automatically throw it into Media Encoder and render it out for you. And so then when you come to going into your animation and you want to send it out, then go. Mission complete. Don't know why mine does that. So I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial for squash and stretch. Feel free to come back to more tutorials that I will have about the different principles of animation.